right? That's the highest of all possible moral goods, is to take on responsibility for suffering and evil. And I don't see how that's deniable. Well, I mean, I can't see how you can think of something that would be better than that. Like, it's almost by definition, nothing can be better than taking responsibility for that, because what you're trying to do is ameliorate suffering and reduce evil. Well, how is that not sort of self-evident? And then that can imbue everything you do, even this simple job of taking a pathway. And you're always on a pathway, so decide where you're headed. And then your life has the sort of meaning that justifies it in some sense. And that way you can have your cake and eat it too. And so, that's a pretty good deal if you can pull it off. What is the evolutionary reason for having consciousness? I think that was Toby who asked that. God only knows. That's been a problem that people have been hammering on for a long time. I mean, that's the so-called zombie problem that David Chalmers has described, which is something like, how do you know that other people aren't exactly like you, except acting in a completely determined manner and devoid of consciousnesses? I don't know what the evolutionary reason is for consciousness. I mean, I can speculate. Like, what consciousness seems to be, at least in part, is a mechanism of repair. So a lot of the things that you do are unconscious. Like when you're driving, if you're an expert driver, you're using your eyes to watch the road, and your eyes are moving your hands and your arms, but you're not really thinking about what you're doing. You're not attending to it consciously, because you've built circuitry already, specialized circuitry that handles all those tasks. Now, what happens when you're driving? Let's say that you make a mistake. Well, then what happens is you consciously attend to the mistake, and you attempt to revise the part of the automatic structure that produced the error. So imagine this. Imagine you're playing the piano. You're playing a very complicated sequence, and you stumble over part of it. So you're zooming along and you stumble over part of it, and then you attend to that. You go back and you slow down and you move your fingers slowly, and you try to reprogram those little automatic units that have handled that part of it. You repair them and reprogram them, and you get faster and faster at it as they automatize, and then you go. So consciousness seems to be something that watches what you do automatically, checks for errors, and then repairs it. And so that's its function. Now, you might ask why a repair mechanism like that would have to be associated with awareness. And the answer to that is, not only do I not know, I don't think anyone knows. If I was speculating, and which I've done, I think consciousness actually plays an integral role in being itself, because I'm not convinced that there would be any being of any recognizable sort without a conscious observer. So I think consciousness is actually like a center point of the cosmos in some sense. And I think it's because of ideas like that the grand archetypal idea of the soul has emerged, and I think it's correct. But how to precisely integrate that with evolutionary theory, apart from the description that I already provided, I just don't know.
Well, there seems to be a metaphorical connection in that the great is reproduced in the small, and that's certainly an idea that permeates, let's say, religious and theological speculation. There's an idea that, here's an idea that, it's like the idea of the genie, which is the same root word as genius. The genie is something of unimaginable power that's constrained in a very small space. And that's kind of what a person is like. We have this affinity, we have this connection to the infinite, we have this connection to the divine, but it's constrained within our frames, right? And we have to act out the divine narrative in the confines of our own life. And so there is this overarching reality, which is something like the forthright confrontation with the catastrophe of life, right? But that has to be made personal, so that's one of Jung's, I would say, deepest ideas, is that the archetypal has to be made personal in your own life. And so you take the generic pattern and you personalize it, and then the infinite and the finite meet, and that's the perfect combination. And there's something about that that's, well, unutterably profound, I would say, and as true as anything can be. And I think people know this at a very deep level, because you do know when you're struggling to go to sleep at night and your conscience is bothering you, and you think through the things that you did in the day and the week, you'll take solace in the things that you did that were noble and true. And you can breathe a sigh of relief that you're not completely corrupt and lost. And then you can sleep. It's like everyone knows this. Well, we need to know it consciously, right? And that's part of the process of making the archetypal personal. And that's part of what the religious process is supposed to be about, is to outline the archetypal pattern, and then to say, look, you have to meditate on this, and you have to figure out how to make it true in the confines of your own life. And that gives, see, the reason that works, I think, is because there's no doubt that your life is tragic, and there's no doubt that you have a malevolent element, and that you'll be touched by betrayal and all those terrible things. But there's a nobility about you too, and that nobility might be sufficient to transcend your limitations. And I would say that your life is a struggle to determine if that might be the case. And that's the act of faith. And I also do believe, I was asked today by a South African journalist if I'm the ultimate pessimist or the ultimate optimist. You know, and I would say in some ways I am the ultimate pessimist. I think as much as I can tolerate how terrible life can be. But I do believe that the human spirit can overcome that catastrophe and can rise out of it. And I think the universities are that idea expressed in stone and tradition. It's a great idea. Everyone needs the idea, especially people who are young. You know that your life is going to be difficult. It's like no one can say, well, it's going to be easy. But you might say, well, do you want it to be easy? What's in it for you if it's easy? Well, no, you want it to be difficult and worthwhile. And you want to be the sort of person that can manage that. And that's what you should be encouraged to be at university. And that's what the universities are for. So, well, that's the archetypal and the personal, I would say. Yeah. If you want to make something strong, you test it. And maybe if you want to make something ultimately strong, you test it ultimately. And I think that there's an aspect of being that has that element, is that human beings are tested ultimately. It's partly because we know good and evil now. And so that's the landscape in which we exist. So you could say,